Okay, this video is about parabolas, and we have done parabolas before. So some of this is going to be review, but it's definitely some new parts because in this video, not only are they going to be opening up and down, but they're going to be opening left and right as well. So let's look at the first ones when they open up and down. So we know if y equals a positive, it's going to open up, and if it's negative, it's going to open down. So this first one is going to open up. And because it's the parent function, we know the vertex, the starting point, it's going to be at 0, 0. Our pattern for a parabola, we're going to go over 1 and up 1 because 1 squared is 1, and over 2 and up 4 because 2 squared is 4. And there is our parabola. The axis is symmetry, which we've talked about a little bit, but it's this invisible line that cuts the graph in half. And if I were able to fold my computer screen on this red line, all the points would line up because it cuts it in half exactly. It is a vertical line, and so when it's vertical, it's always going to be x equals, and it's going to be x equals where it crosses the x-axis, which is 0. Domain left to right, the graph is getting wider, so the domain is going to be negative infinity to infinity. The range goes from the bottom up, and the graph starts at 0, but I'm going to have a bracket there because it contains that point, and then it goes to infinity. All right. If we're looking at number 2, before when we graphed parabolas, we talked about shifts. And because this -4 is not with the x, it's outside of the parentheses, that would indicate that it would start down 4. And that point would be 0, -4. And we can tell this without doing the shifts and graphing it because the number that's added or subtracted to with the x is going to give us the x coordinate of the vertex, and this is going to give us the y. All right, but now that we've got the vertex and we know because it's y equals a positive, it's going to open up. Now we can use our pattern over 1 up 1, over 2 up 4, and there is our parabola. The axis of symmetry is going to be the vertical line that cuts the graph in half. And because it's vertical, it's going to be x equals, it crosses the x-axis at 0, so it's x equals 0. Our domain for all these that run up and down is going to be negative infinity to infinity. And the range on this one, it starts at -4. So it's going to go -4 to infinity. All right, let's look at number 3. Now in number 3, if we were to say the shifts, we'd say left 4 and up 6. Left 4 and up 6 is here. So our vertex is -4, 6. And if you think about that, this is where I got the x coordinate, but notice it says +4, but we said -4. And this is where we got the y, and this number is the same. So it's the opposite of what's in the parentheses and the same here. But because of the negative, it's a reflection, so we know it's going to open down. So over 1, down 1, over 2, down 4. And there is our parabola. Our axis of symmetry, when it doesn't go through 0, when it's not on an axis, because when on an axis, it's a little tricky to tell, but when it's not on an axis, we know because it's a vertical line, but we can also see this red line, my axis of symmetry, crosses the x-axis, and it crosses the x-axis at -4. So my axis of symmetry is going to be x equals -4. So you don't have to overthink whether it's x or y, you just read it off the graph. Even though it's upside down, it's still going to get wider. So my domain is negative infinity to infinity. And my range this time, because it's going from the bottom up, it's now starting at negative infinity and going all the way up to 6 with a bracket because it contains that point. All right, let's see if we can find the vertex before we even talk about the shifts. So this controls the x, but because it's in parentheses, it's the opposite. So this is 2. And this controls the y, so it's -7. Because it's y equals a positive, it opens up. So I'm going to go to 2, -7. Here's my point. And now I can plot more points. I'm going to go over, and normally I'd go up 1, but I have to double it. So I have to go 2, and normally I'd go over 2 and up 4. Oh, excuse me, we're not doubling it, we're tripling it. Sorry, 3, and then we go over 2, and normally we go 4, we get triplets, so we have to go up 12. So it goes all the way up here. Now, yes, I've done this graph before, so I knew where the points would be, but you don't have to count up 12. right here, this point at the bottom was 7 below. So up to the line would be 7 points. So I need 5 more to get to 12. So just be at 5. I don't need to count that. Okay, the axis of symmetry. It's going to be this vertical line that goes through the center. And this red line crosses the x-axis at 2. So the axis of symmetry is x equals 2. The domain is still negative infinity to infinity. The range, it starts at 7 and it goes to infinity. All right. On the next one. Now, instead of starting with an x, or excuse me, with a y, it's starting with an x. And when it starts with an x, it can either open right or left. If it's x equals a positive, it opens to the right. And if it's x equals a negative, it opens to the left. So let's look at this basic one. So we can tell without too much work, it's equally a positive. So it's right. And my vertex has to be 0, 0. So I'm going to start at the point 0, 0. Now, normally I'd go over and up, but since it goes to the right, I'm going to go up and down 1 and right 1 and up and down 2 and right 4. So my parabola looks like this. My axis of symmetry is now going this way. And before, when it was a vertical line, it was x equals. So now it's a horizontal line. It's going to be y equals. Now my domain and range are going to change a little bit because my domain, as I go left to right, it doesn't start until it gets to 0 on the x-axis, and then it goes to infinity. The range, however, up and down, it keeps getting wider, not left and right, but up and down. So the range is negative infinity to infinity. All right, let's look at this one. Now what's confusing is trying to figure out where the vertex is. But you see how this has a y in it? That's going to control the y of the vertex, and this is going to control the x. But anytime it's in parentheses, it's going to be the opposite. So the y of my vertex is 3, and the x is negative 4. So even though we're kind of reading it backwards in the problem, when we write our ordered pairs, we always have to write them x then y. Okay, and because it's x equals a positive, we know we have to open right. So I'm going to start at negative 4, 3. And then instead of going over and up, I'm going to go up and down and to my right, and up and down and to my right. And so I can make the parabola that looks like this. If I'm looking at my axis of symmetry, this time it crosses the y-axis at 3, so it's y equals 3. My domain, it doesn't start until it gets to negative 4, and then it keeps going, so it's negative 4 to infinity. The range is negative infinity to infinity. All right, let's look at number 7. On number 7, x equals a positive. We know it's going to be to the right. The vertex, this is in the parentheses. See, it has a y, so that's going to control the y. The number out here is going to be the x. So my y coordinate is going to be negative 6, but there's nothing added on, so that's going to be 0. So I'm going to start at the point 0 on the x, negative 6 on the y, and it opens to the right. So up and down 1, and right 1, up and down 2, and right 4. Whoops. It's not on the graph, but close enough that we can make it work. And there is our parabola. The axis of symmetry cuts the graph in half, and it crosses the y-axis at negative 6, so it's y equals negative 6. The domain, go left to right. It starts at 0, so we go 0 to infinity, and the range is negative infinity to negative infinity. All right, let's see what happens on this one. On this one, it is negative. So now when x equals negative, it's going to open to the left. This controls the y and this controls the x. So my vertex is going to be 5, 2, because you only change the sign of what's in the parentheses. So I'm going to go to 5, 2 and make a point. Now it's got to open to the left. So up and down 1, left 1, up and down 2, left 4. And now we've got our parabola to the left. So the axis of symmetry is the line that cuts it in half. It crosses the y at 2, so it's going to be y equals 2. The domain, when I read it left to right, I do have points off to the left. It starts way off to the left, which means it starts at negative infinity and goes all the way to 5. And the range still remains negative infinity to infinity. Okay, we got 4 more left, but we're not going to do all 4. Let's skip. We're just going to do, how about we do 11 and 12, and then we can call it good, just so you can see the horizontal stretch and shrink this time. Okay, so on this one, it's x equals, and it's positive, so it's going to open to the right. The vertex, this is the y, this is the x, so it's going to be negative 2, 3. It's opening to the right, but this time it's a horizontal shrink. And I said horizontal because now it's right and left, not up and down. Okay, and so instead of going over 1 and right 1, we go over 1 and right a half. Instead of going over 2 and right 4, we go right 2. So it got shrunk, so it's wider. My axis of symmetry goes through the y-axis at 3, so it's y equals 3. The domain starts at negative 2 and goes to infinity. The range goes from negative infinity to infinity. Okay, number 12. Number 12, because it's x equals a negative, we know it's got to be opening to the left. This is my vertex, this is my y, this is my x. So this is going to be 7, 4. Okay, so I'm going to start at the point 7, 4, which is right here. I know it's opening to my left, but it also has a horizontal stretch. And so we have to double it. So we're going to go over 1 and right 2, or excuse me, left 2. And then we have to go over 2 and we double it. So we have to go left 8. And again, I didn't count it because I was at 7. That gives me 7 places. I just go 1 more. My axis of symmetry crosses the y at 4. My domain, I do have points on the left, so it starts at negative infinity, but stops at 7, and the range is negative infinity to infinity.